Careful, the blonde influencer said with a sharp little laugh, lifting her champagne glass just high enough for everyone nearby to hear. Poor people leave fingerprints. The women around her giggled instantly, soft and cruel beneath the golden lights of the showroom, while Chloe Bennett froze with the cleaning cloth still in her hand. For 1 second, the entire 30,000-square-foot luxury gallery seemed to stop breathing. Music still drifted from hidden speakers. Crystal chandeliers still glowed above polished marble floors. Models in silk gowns still posed beside mirrored displays worth more than Chloe's yearly rent. But all Chloe could hear was laughter. She lowered her eyes quickly, gripping the spray bottle tighter as heat crawled up her neck. The influencer smiled wider, clearly enjoying herself now that people were watching. "Relax," she added dramatically, waving a manicured hand. "I'm kidding." More laughter followed. Small, polite, expensive. The kind of laughter rich people used when they wanted to humiliate someone without looking ugly doing it. Chloe swallowed hard and forced herself to nod. "Sorry," she murmured quietly before stepping aside with her cart. Her sneakers squeaked softly against the marble floor as she moved away from the display platform. $12 shoes from a discount store. Slightly faded black work pants. Oversized gray maintenance shirt with her first name stitched over the pocket. In a building full of designer fabrics and million-dollar contracts, Chloe looked invisible. That was usually how she survived. Invisible people didn't get noticed. Invisible people kept their jobs. Invisible people made it through another month. But tonight, for some reason, every eye in the room seemed to follow her. Above the showroom floor, inside a glass office overlooking the event, Ethan Calloway stood perfectly still beside the window. One hand rested loosely in his pocket, while the other held a crystal tumbler untouched for nearly 20 minutes. At 34, Ethan had already built Calloway Atelier into one of the biggest luxury fashion houses in America. Magazine covers called him brilliant. Investors called him ruthless. Employees called him terrifying when he wasn't around to hear it. But right now, none of that mattered to him. His dark eyes stayed locked on the girl downstairs, pushing a cleaning cart beneath $6 million chandeliers. "Who's the comedian?" he asked calmly without looking away from the glass. Beside him, his assistant Sophia glanced toward the showroom floor. "Vanessa Marlowe," she answered carefully. "Lifestyle influencer. 20 million followers." Ethan's expression didn't change. That was all he said. But something cold settled behind his eyes. Downstairs, Chloe moved quickly toward the back hallway, trying to ignore the burning embarrassment climbing into her chest. She had worked enough night shifts to know rich people didn't see workers as real human beings. Especially not in fashion. In fashion, appearance was everything. Beauty was currency. Confidence was oxygen. And Chloe had neither. She pushed open the heavy service door and stepped into the quieter hallway behind the showroom. The sudden silence hit her almost painfully. No cameras. No music. No laughter. Just fluorescent lights humming softly overhead and the distant sound of garment racks rolling across concrete floors somewhere deeper inside the building. Chloe leaned against the wall for half a second and closed her eyes. "Don't cry," she whispered to herself. "Seriously, don't cry over idiots." Her voice sounded small in the empty corridor. She took a slow breath, adjusted the loose ponytail slipping over her shoulder, and reached for her cleaning supplies again. Rent was due in 4 days. Her mother's medication refill was due tomorrow morning. Crying wasn't going to help either one. So she went back to work. 2 hours later, the event finally ended. Guests disappeared into black SUVs waiting beneath the glowing Manhattan streets, while exhausted employees rushed through cleanup. Chloe silently wiped fingerprints from glass displays near the runway platform, while security guards shut down lighting sections one by one. The massive showroom slowly transformed from glamorous to ghostly. Gold lights dimmed. Music faded. Designer gowns were zipped into garment bags worth more than most people's mortgages. By midnight, only a handful of workers remained in the building. Chloe preferred it that way. Night felt honest. At night, nobody pretended. The influencers were gone. The fake smiles disappeared. Luxury became just another room full of objects collecting dust. She rolled her cleaning cart slowly between mannequins dressed in next season's couture collection. One mannequin near the center display made her stop. Chloe tilted her head slightly. The styling felt wrong. Too heavy. Too crowded around the neckline. the silver earrings distracted from the structure of the gown itself. She glanced around instinctively, even though nobody was nearby. Then, carefully, she reached up and removed one of the earrings. Better. Her eyes narrowed thoughtfully. She adjusted the angle of the mannequin's shoulder slightly. Then she stepped back again. The gown suddenly looked elegant instead of expensive. Chloe stared at it for a second longer before quietly continuing her work. She didn't notice the tiny red security camera light blinking above the display. Upstairs, Ethan had returned to his office to grab forgotten documents before heading home. As he stepped inside, one of the security monitors caught his attention. He paused. On screen, the cleaning girl from earlier stood alone beneath the showroom lights, adjusting a couture display with slow, careful hands. Ethan frowned slightly. Instead of looking clumsy or intimidated now, she looked precise. Intentional, like she understood the clothing better than the people who designed it. He watched her remove the earring, tilt the mannequin, step backward, pause, study, then nod faintly to herself before moving on. Ethan glanced toward the live showroom below the glass office, then back to the screen. Strange. Most people walk through fashion spaces trying to impress others. But this girl moved like she forgot anyone could see her. He sat down slowly in front of the monitor without fully understanding why. On screen, Chloe stopped beside another display table covered with sketches and fabric samples abandoned after the event. She picked up one sketch absent-mindedly while cleaning. Ethan expected her to put it down immediately. Instead, she grabbed a pen lying nearby and changed something on the drawing. 3 quick lines. That was it. Then she placed the sketch back exactly where she found it and continued cleaning. Ethan leaned forward slightly. Something about the movement unsettled him. Not because it was disrespectful, because it looked confident. Too confident. A cleaning girl should not be improving one of his senior designer's sketches in under 3 seconds. He replayed the camera footage immediately. Then again, and again. The tiny changes she made somehow transformed the silhouette completely. Cleaner, sharper, more elegant. Ethan stared at the frozen screen. Interesting, he murmured quietly. Downstairs, Chloe hummed softly to herself while polishing fingerprints from the glass staircase. She had no idea the billionaire CEO of Callaway Atelier was still sitting upstairs watching security footage of her like it was the most fascinating thing he'd seen all week. She definitely had no idea that, at that exact moment, Ethan Callaway canceled his midnight dinner reservation without looking away from the screen. Because for the first time in months, something inside his perfectly controlled world had surprised him. And Ethan Callaway was becoming dangerously curious. By 6:30 the next morning, Callaway Atelier was already alive again. Assistants hurried across polished floors carrying garment bags. Stylists balanced coffee cups beside fabric binders. Publicists barked into wireless headsets while giant digital screens flashed schedules for the upcoming fall collection launch. Outside the 48-story Manhattan building, black SUVs lined the curb beneath cold gray skies, threatening rain. Inside, perfection was expected before sunrise. Ethan Callaway stepped out of the elevator in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than most monthly salaries in the building. Conversations lowered instantly as employees noticed him crossing the showroom floor. He barely acknowledged anyone. His attention moved automatically toward the central display platform from the previous night. Then he stopped walking. The mannequin, the same silver gown, the same lighting. But somehow the entire presentation looked elevated. Cleaner, more expensive, more emotional. Ethan narrowed his eyes slightly. He knew every inch of his showroom, every visual decision, every layout approval. This was different, subtle enough that most people would never notice. But he noticed. Who adjusted this display? He asked calmly. 3 nearby employees exchanged nervous glances. The visual team finished setup last night. One assistant answered carefully. Ethan kept staring at the mannequin. No, he said quietly. Someone changed it after. Nobody spoke. Ethan walked closer to the display. The removed earring sat neatly beside the jewelry stand exactly where Chloe had placed it hours earlier. His jaw tightened slightly. Interesting. Very interesting. Across the room, Vanessa Marlowe entered the showroom wearing white designer boots and oversized sunglasses despite the cloudy weather outside. 2 assistants trailed behind her carrying shopping bags and iced coffee. Ethan, she called brightly the moment she spotted him. I posted last night's event. We already hit 4 million views. Ethan turned politely. Congratulations. Vanessa smiled, clearly waiting for more enthusiasm than that. People loved the showroom. She slipped her sunglasses onto her head dramatically. Although your cleaning staff could use media training. One of her assistants laughed immediately. Ethan did not. Vanessa's smile weakened slightly. It was a joke, she added. Ethan studied her face for one long second before answering calmly. Usually jokes are funny. Silence fell between them. Vanessa blinked awkwardly. Right. Ethan gave a small nod and walked away before she could recover. Behind him, the influencer's expression darkened with embarrassment. Upstairs in his private office, Ethan replayed the security footage again on the large monitor built into the wall. Chloe adjusting the mannequin. Chloe editing the sketch. Chloe moving through the empty showroom like she belonged there more than the designers themselves. Ethan leaned back slowly in his chair. He should have moved on by now. He had investor meetings at 10, fabric negotiations at noon, a dinner with European buyers tonight. But instead, he found himself watching a maintenance employee redraw couture silhouettes at 1 in the morning. Something about it bothered him in a way he could not explain. Not because she touched the designs, because she understood them. His office door opened softly. Sophia entered carrying his morning schedule tablet. The Milan team moved the conference call to 11, she said while setting coffee beside him. Then she noticed the paused security footage on the screen. You were still watching that. Ethan did not answer immediately. Who hired her? He asked instead. Sophia glanced at the screen. Chloe Bennett. Night maintenance crew. Temporary contract through building services. Ethan looked back toward the footage. Background. Minimal. Sophia tapped the tablet. 24 years old. Lives in Queens. No college degree listed. No social media accounts. Ethan frowned slightly. No social media. In Manhattan. That alone felt almost suspicious. Anything else? Sophia hesitated. Her father was Daniel Bennett. Ethan's eyes finally shifted toward her. The tailor. Yes. Now that got his attention. Daniel Bennett had once been respected in luxury fashion circles years ago before disappearing completely from the industry. Ethan remembered seeing his name in old design archives while building Callaway Atelier. Elegant tailoring. Beautiful structure work. Then sudden bankruptcy. Scandal rumors. Disappearance. Ethan stared silently at the paused image of Chloe on the screen. Same sharp eye. Same instinct for balance and proportion. Suddenly it made sense. Interesting, he murmured again. Downstairs, Chloe pushed her cleaning cart into the employee locker room while trying not to fall asleep standing up. Her shift had ended 30 minutes ago, but one of the supervisors forced her to stay late after discovering fingerprints on mirrored panels near the east staircase. She rubbed her tired eyes and changed into a faded brown coat before checking her phone. 3 missed calls from the pharmacy. Her stomach tightened immediately. She called back while hurrying toward the subway entrance outside. Miss Bennett, the pharmacist said gently after answering, your mother's insurance did not cover the refill amount. Chloe closed her eyes briefly. How much? $247. Her chest sank. Rent. Groceries. Utility bill. She mentally calculated everything at once while cold wind rushed through the crowded Manhattan sidewalk around her. Can I pay half today? She asked quietly. The pharmacist paused sympathetically. We can hold it until Friday. Chloe thanked him softly before ending the call. Friday. She had $43 in her checking account. By the time she reached Queens, rain had started falling steadily across the city. Chloe climbed the narrow apartment stairs quietly and unlocked the door to the tiny one-bedroom she shared with her mother. The apartment smelled faintly like tea and old books. Warm. Familiar. Safe. Her mother looked up from the couch immediately. Long night? She asked gently. Chloe forced a smile. Fashion people are exhausting. Her mother laughed softly before coughing into a tissue. Even after all these years, she still looked beautiful in Chloe's eyes. Tired now, paler than before, but warm in the way wealthy people never seem to be. Chloe hung up her coat and walked toward the tiny kitchen counter where stacks of unopened bills sat beside grocery coupons. She quietly moved them aside before reaching for the sketchbook hidden underneath. Her fingers brushed the worn black cover carefully. That sketchbook mattered more to her than almost anything she owned. Years of designs filled those pages. Dresses, silhouettes, runway concepts, ideas she never showed anyone. Not after what happened to her father. You should send those designs somewhere. her mother said softly from the couch, noticing the sketchbook instantly. Chloe shook her head. No, Chloe, Mom. Her voice stayed gentle but firm. Fashion people like girls named Vanessa, not cleaning staff from Queens. Her mother looked sad hearing that. Chloe hated herself a little for saying it out loud, because part of her still wanted it. Still wanted to design. Still wanted to create beautiful things the way her father once did before the industry destroyed him piece by piece. But dreams cost money. Reality cost less. So she opened the refrigerator instead and pretended not to notice the nearly empty shelves. Back in Manhattan, Ethan remained alone in his office long after sunset. The building slowly emptied floor by floor while rain streaked against giant windows overlooking the city skyline. His laptop sat untouched beside cold coffee. On screen, security footage continued playing silently. Chloe adjusting lights. Chloe fixing fabrics. Chloe improving displays nobody asked her to touch. Ethan rested his hand against his jaw thoughtfully. He had spent years surrounded by talented people who desperately wanted his attention. Designers who fought for approval. Influencers who performed for invitations. Executives who practically rehearsed every sentence around him. Yet somehow the only person who genuinely caught his attention was a cleaning girl who did not even know he was watching her. Then suddenly, on the footage, Chloe paused beside one mannequin and quietly smiled to herself after adjusting the gown. A real smile. Small. Unaware. Beautiful in a completely unpolished way. Ethan froze. Something strange tightened in his chest before he could stop it. He immediately leaned back from the screen, like distancing himself physically might somehow erase the feeling. But it did not. Because for the first time in years, Ethan Calloway realized he was no longer simply curious about Chloe Bennett. He was looking for reasons to keep watching her. The next night, Chloe arrived at Calloway Atelier 20 minutes early because the subway delays had finally worked in her favor for once. Rainwater still clung to the edges of her coat as she stepped through the employee entrance carrying a paper bag with peanut butter crackers and a $5 coffee already turning cold in her hands. The security guard near the back desk barely looked up anymore when she scanned her temporary ID badge. Night, Chloe, he muttered absently while watching a basketball game on his phone. Night. She forced a tired smile before heading toward the locker room downstairs. Her body ached from lack of sleep. Her mother's cough had worsened overnight, and Chloe had spent half the morning arguing with insurance representatives over medication approvals that still went nowhere. By the time she finally fell asleep that afternoon, she only managed 3 hours before her alarm dragged her back into reality. But the second she stepped onto the showroom floor again, something inside her shifted automatically. The building felt different at night. Cleaner, quieter, honest. Giant windows reflected Manhattan lights across polished marble, while unfinished displays waited beneath dimmed chandeliers like sleeping sculptures. Here, nobody expected her to smile. Nobody cared what shoes she wore. And for a few hours every night, Chloe could breathe. She pushed her cleaning cart slowly across the west runway platform, spraying glass panels one at a time while soft jazz drifted through hidden ceiling speakers left on by the day staff. Her reflection stared back at her in every polished surface. Blonde hair tied carelessly back. Dark circles beneath blue eyes. Exhaustion wrapped around her shoulders like another layer of clothing. Invisible girl. That was what this place turned people like her into. Invisible until someone needed a stain cleaned or trash removed. Chloe reached the central display platform and immediately frowned. Somebody had changed the mannequin arrangement from the night before. Worse than changed. Ruined. The silver gown she adjusted yesterday now sat beneath harsh overhead lighting that flattened the fabric completely. Too bright. Too cold. The neckline disappeared under unnecessary diamonds added by some stylist desperate to look expensive instead of elegant. Chloe sighed softly under her breath. You murdered it, she murmured quietly toward the mannequin. Her father used to say beautiful fashion should whisper, not scream. Most luxury brands forgot that once money became louder than artistry. Chloe stepped around the platform slowly while wiping fingerprints from mirrored walls. She tried ignoring the display. Really tried. But after 10 minutes, she could not help herself anymore. She set down the spray bottle carefully and adjusted one spotlight by a few inches. Immediately, the silver fabric softened beneath the warmer angle. Better. She removed 2 diamond bracelets cluttering the mannequin's wrist. Better again. Finally, she stepped backward and tilted her head thoughtfully. Still not perfect, but breathing again. You always do that? A voice asked suddenly behind her. Chloe jumped so hard the cleaning cloth slipped from her hand. She spun around instantly and froze. Ethan Calloway stood near the staircase watching her. Alone. No assistants. No executives. Just him in a black dress shirt with sleeves rolled slightly back, one hand resting casually in his pocket while rain tapped softly against the giant windows behind him. Chloe's stomach dropped straight to the floor. I am sorry, she blurted immediately. I was just cleaning, and I thought maybe the lighting looked a little better. Ethan finished calmly. Chloe stopped talking. Her cheeks warmed instantly. I should not touch things, she admitted quietly while bending to grab the dropped cloth. Ethan watched her carefully for a moment. Up close, she looked even more exhausted than she did on the security footage. Tiny shadows beneath her eyes. Slightly trembling fingers from too much caffeine and not enough sleep. Yet somehow she still stared at fashion displays like they mattered. Like they were alive. What was wrong with it, he asked. Chloe blinked in surprise. Excuse me. Ethan nodded toward the mannequin. You changed it for a reason. Chloe hesitated immediately. Rich people loved asking workers questions they did not actually want answered. Usually honesty just got you fired faster. The jewelry distracted from the silhouette, she admitted carefully after a second. And the lighting flattened the drape. Silence. Ethan simply looked at her. Chloe suddenly became painfully aware she was standing in front of one of the most powerful fashion CEOs in America, wearing bleach-stained work pants, while discussing couture lighting like she belonged there. She lowered her eyes quickly. Sorry. Ethan's expression shifted slightly. You apologize a lot. Chloe gave a small, awkward laugh. Usually keeps me employed. That almost made him smile. Almost. Instead, he glanced back toward the mannequin again. What else? Chloe looked up uncertainly. What? What else would you change? Ethan asked. She stared at him for a second, trying to decide whether this was some kind of test. His face revealed absolutely nothing. Finally, cautiously, she pointed toward the gown. The hemline should sit a half-inch shorter if you want the movement to feel lighter under runway lighting. Ethan remained silent. Chloe instantly regretted speaking. Forget I said that. Why? She blinked again. Because I clean floors. Ethan studied her face carefully. No arrogance. No performance. Just embarrassment. Like talent itself felt dangerous to admit out loud. Daniel Bennett taught you? He asked quietly. Chloe froze completely. The entire showroom suddenly felt too still. How do you know my father? She whispered. Ethan leaned lightly against the staircase railing. I know fashion. Chloe looked away immediately. Her chest tightened painfully hearing her father's name inside this building. She had spent years avoiding conversations about him because fashion people always reacted the same way. First recognition, then pity, then awkward silence after remembering how his career ended. My father is not part of this world anymore, she said softly. Ethan noticed the way her voice changed saying it. Protective. Wounded. No, he agreed quietly. But his eye for structure was exceptional. Chloe looked genuinely surprised by that answer. Most people only remembered the scandal rumors. Ethan remembered the work. Before either of them could say another word, loud footsteps echoed suddenly from the far hallway. Sophia appeared carrying a tablet against her chest before stopping short at the sight of them together beside the display platform. Her eyes moved quickly between Ethan and Chloe. Interesting. Ethan straightened calmly. Sophia, move tomorrow morning's visual review to 10. Of course. She tried not to look curious. Ethan glanced back toward Chloe one final time. Do not touch anything else tonight, he said evenly. Chloe's stomach sank instantly. There it was. The warning. The reminder of where she belonged. Understood, she answered quietly. But then Ethan added, until I ask you to. Chloe looked up sharply. He was already walking away across the marble floor before she could respond. Sophia followed beside him, while stealing one more glance backward at the cleaning girl standing speechless beneath the chandelier lights. Upstairs in the private elevator, Sophia finally spoke carefully. You are interested in her. Ethan did not look away from the closing showroom doors. No, he answered too quickly. Sophia almost smiled. Right. Ethan ignored that completely. But deep down, something unsettled him. Because the second Chloe Bennett started talking about silhouette structure and runway movement, he stopped seeing a cleaning girl standing beside a mannequin and started seeing someone he could not stop thinking about. The next 3 nights felt strange in a way Chloe could not explain. Nobody openly bothered her anymore. Nobody laughed when she crossed the showroom floor. Even Vanessa Marlowe stopped making comments after her awkward exchange with Ethan. But somehow that almost made things worse. Because now people watched her. Stylists glanced at her when she walked by. Assistants lowered their voices near her cleaning cart. One executive actually apologized after bumping into her near the elevator, which had never happened before in the history of Manhattan. Chloe hated it immediately. Invisible had been easier. Invisible was safe. But now every shift carried this strange tension beneath the surface, like the building itself had noticed her existence and had not decided yet whether that was a good thing. Around 11:30 Thursday night, Chloe stood inside the accessory showroom polishing mirrored shelves lined with luxury handbags worth more than her apartment. Rain hammered softly against the windows outside, while downtown traffic glowed red and gold 30 floors below. She tried focusing on work, but her mind kept replaying Ethan's voice from 2 nights ago. What else would you change? Nobody had asked her that before. Not seriously. Not like her opinion mattered. Certainly not someone like Ethan Calloway. Chloe sprayed another glass shelf harder than necessary. Dangerous. That was what this whole thing felt like. Rich men noticed girls like her for entertainment, not opportunity. Her father used to warn her constantly about people in fashion with too much money and too little soul. Talent impresses them, he once told her while pinning fabric onto a dress form years ago. But vulnerability entertains them. Chloe never forgot that sentence, which was exactly why she avoided Ethan whenever possible after their conversation. Unfortunately, Ethan Calloway suddenly seemed to be everywhere. Earlier tonight, he appeared unexpectedly during a late fabric review while Chloe cleaned nearby display windows. Yesterday, he passed directly through the maintenance corridor instead of using the executive elevators. The night before that, she caught him standing silently near the runway platform, watching her rearrange lighting reflections across mirrored walls before he walked away without saying a word. It made absolutely no sense. Billionaire CEOs did not spend their nights wandering around watching cleaning staff. Yet somehow Ethan kept appearing beside her like a thought she could not shake loose. There she is. Chloe stiffened instantly at the sound of Vanessa's voice echoing through the accessory room. She turned slowly to find the influencer entering with 2 photographers and a makeup artist trailing behind her. Vanessa wore cream-colored leather pants and a fitted designer coat despite it being almost midnight. Perfect, Vanessa said brightly while looking around the room. This lighting is amazing for content. One photographer glanced awkwardly toward Chloe. We can wait until maintenance finishes. Vanessa waved dismissively. She is fine. Chloe quietly moved her cart toward the side wall, hoping to disappear again. Vanessa barely looked at her while positioning herself beside a glass display. Can somebody move this? She complained suddenly, pointing toward Chloe's cleaning bucket. It is ruining the shot. Chloe immediately stepped forward. Sorry. As she bent down to grab the bucket handle, Vanessa laughed lightly toward the photographers. See? That is why I could never do regular jobs. I would literally die. The photographers laughed politely. Chloe kept her eyes lowered while moving the cart away. Her chest tightened, but she stayed silent. Silence paid bills. Silence kept medicine in the cabinet. Silence survived. Actually, a calm voice said from the doorway. Some people work for a living. The room froze instantly. Ethan stood near the entrance wearing a dark overcoat over his suit, one hand resting loosely in his pocket while rainwater glistened faintly across his shoulders. Vanessa's smile faltered immediately. Ethan, I was just joking. Ethan walked slowly into the room without looking at her. His eyes moved directly toward Chloe instead. She stood frozen beside her cleaning cart, gripping the bucket handle too tightly. You should head home, he said calmly to Vanessa. The influencer blinked. But we still need photos for the launch campaign. Tomorrow, Ethan answered simply. Something in his tone ended the discussion instantly. Vanessa forced a strained smile before gathering her team. As they hurried out of the room, Chloe heard the influencer whisper under her breath. What is his problem lately? The second they disappeared, silence settled heavily across the showroom again. Chloe focused on wiping the counter in front of her without looking up. Ethan moved toward the handbag displays slowly. You missed a fingerprint, he said casually. Chloe glanced up automatically. There was no fingerprint. Ethan noticed her realizing that. A faint, almost smile touched the corner of his mouth before disappearing. Chloe stared at him suspiciously. Did you really come down here for imaginary fingerprints? Ethan rested one shoulder lightly against the glass shelf beside her. Maybe. Her heartbeat stumbled unexpectedly. Dangerous. Definitely dangerous. She quickly looked back down at the cloth in her hands. You should not be down here, she muttered softly. Why? Chloe gave a quiet, humorless laugh. Because people already think I am weird. Ethan studied her profile carefully beneath the warm showroom lighting. She looked exhausted again tonight. Tiny shadows beneath her eyes. Fingers roughened slightly from cleaning chemicals. Yet somehow, even standing beside a maintenance cart, Chloe carried herself with this strange natural grace he could not stop noticing. Like elegance had nothing to do with money after all. You are not weird, he said quietly. Chloe finally looked up. You barely know me. Ethan held her gaze calmly. I know enough. The air between them shifted suddenly. Softer. More dangerous somehow. Chloe immediately stepped backward slightly. Mr. Calloway, Ethan. I should finish cleaning. Then finish. He did not move. Chloe tried ignoring him while wiping glass displays, but she could feel his attention following every movement. Not in a predatory way. Worse. Curious. Focused. Like he was trying to solve something. Finally, after several minutes of unbearable silence, Ethan picked up one of the luxury handbags from the display shelf. This collection is underperforming, he said casually. Chloe glanced over instinctively before she could stop herself. Because the presentation is wrong. Ethan slowly looked at her. Go on. Chloe instantly regretted speaking again. Forget it. No, his voice stayed calm. Patient. Tell me. Chloe hesitated, then quietly stepped toward the display. Luxury customers do not buy bags first, she explained carefully while adjusting one spotlight. They buy identity. Ethan watched her closely. Right now this looks expensive, but it does not feel personal. She moved one handbag slightly lower on the shelf beside a framed black and white photograph from the campaign shoot. Suddenly the entire display felt warmer. Human. Aspirational instead of intimidating. Ethan stared at it silently. Better again. Somehow she kept doing that. Where did you learn this? He asked softly. Chloe touched the edge of the display shelf gently. My father used to say fashion is just storytelling people wear on their bodies. Ethan's chest tightened unexpectedly hearing that. Because somewhere beneath the exhaustion and oversized maintenance uniform stood a girl who still loved beauty despite everything life had taken from her. And for reasons he could not fully explain anymore, that realization affected him far more than it should have. Before Ethan could answer, his phone buzzed sharply in his pocket. He glanced at the screen briefly. Board members. Again. His expression darkened immediately. Chloe noticed the shift. Billionaire armor sliding back into place. Cold. Controlled. Untouchable. Ethan slipped the phone away without answering. Then looked back at her one final time. Do not let people like Vanessa convince you that invisibility is safety, he said quietly. Chloe frowned slightly. What does that mean? Ethan's eyes lingered on her for one dangerous second too long. It means, he said softly, some people become impossible not to notice. Then he walked away before she could respond, leaving Chloe standing alone beside the glowing handbag display while her heartbeat refused to calm down. By Monday morning, the entire building knew something was happening. Nobody said it directly, of course. Luxury companies survived on polished smiles and whispered rumors disguised as concern. But every assistant on the 32nd floor noticed Ethan Calloway had suddenly started appearing during overnight setup reviews. Stylists noticed he walked through maintenance corridors now instead of using private executive routes. Security guards noticed him requesting camera footage personally at 2 in the morning. And unfortunately for Chloe, people also noticed where his attention kept landing. You are famous now, one janitor joked quietly while restocking paper towels beside her cart. Chloe almost dropped the cleaning spray bottle. Please do not say things like that. The older man laughed softly. Relax, kid. Rich people get bored fast. Chloe forced a smile, but her stomach stayed tight the rest of the shift. Because deep down, that was exactly what terrified her. She knew men like Ethan existed in different universes than women like her. Men with private drivers and penthouses and watches worth 6 figures did not accidentally become interested in cleaning girls from Queens. There was always a reason. Curiosity, amusement, temporary fascination. And temporary things could destroy people who forgot they were temporary. Around midnight, Chloe wheeled her cart into Studio B, where the visual merchandising team had spent all day preparing a luxury accessories campaign for European buyers arriving later that week. Half-unpacked handbags sat scattered across white display tables, while giant digital screens flashed mood boards against the walls. The room smelled faintly like leather and expensive perfume. Chloe quietly started wiping fingerprints from the glass shelving units while trying not to disturb anything. 20 minutes later, voices echoed from the hallway outside. Chloe immediately recognized Vanessa Marlowe's laugh, drifting closer. "I am telling you," the influencer said loudly as she entered the studio with two stylists behind her. "Ethan has been acting completely weird lately." Chloe kept her head lowered instantly. "Invisible. Stay invisible. Maybe he is stressed," one stylist offered. Vanessa scoffed. "No. Men only act distracted when there is a woman involved." The second stylist laughed. "You think he likes someone?" Vanessa rolled her eyes dramatically. "Please. Ethan does not date normal women. The man barely likes humans." More laughter followed. Chloe silently wiped the same shelf twice, just to avoid attention. Then Vanessa suddenly spotted her near the back display. Her expression sharpened immediately. "Well," she said slowly, "speak of the cleaning fairy." Chloe pretended not to hear. Vanessa crossed the room in expensive heels, clicking sharply across marble floors. "Tell me something," she said sweetly while leaning against a display table beside Chloe. "What exactly did you do to get Ethan's attention?" Chloe froze. "Nothing." Vanessa smiled without warmth. "Right." The stylists exchanged uncomfortable glances nearby. Chloe gripped the cleaning cloth tighter. "I just work here." "Exactly," Vanessa replied lightly. "That is why it is confusing." The words landed softly. Cruelly, Chloe stared down at the glass shelf while heat climbed her neck again. "Vanessa." Every head in the room turned instantly toward the doorway. Ethan stood there in a dark wool coat, rain still clinging faintly to his shoulders from outside. His expression remained calm. Too calm. Vanessa's confident smile faltered slightly. "Ethan, we were just talking." "I heard." Silence spread heavily across the studio. Ethan walked slowly into the room while removing his gloves one finger at a time. "The Milan buyers moved their arrival earlier," he said evenly. "I need the final display adjustments tonight." Vanessa immediately recovered her polished smile. "Perfect timing. We were reviewing the accessory layouts." Ethan's eyes moved briefly toward Chloe still standing beside her cleaning cart. Then back to Vanessa. "Were you?" Something cold flickered beneath the question. Vanessa hesitated. "Of course." Ethan glanced casually toward the main handbag display near the center wall. "Then explain why the lighting placement ruins the texture contrast on the leather." Silence. Vanessa blinked. One stylist looked down immediately. Ethan waited calmly. Nobody answered. Finally, his gaze shifted slowly toward Chloe. "What would you change?" The room froze. Chloe's heart nearly stopped. "Me?" Ethan nodded once. Vanessa let out a short, incredulous laugh. "You cannot be serious." Ethan never looked away from Chloe. "Answer the question." Every instinct inside Chloe screamed at her to stay quiet. But Ethan's eyes held hers steadily, patiently, like he genuinely expected an answer. Not a performance. Not entertainment. An answer. Slowly, nervously, Chloe stepped toward the display wall. "The spotlights are too high," she said softly. "Luxury leather photographs better with warmer shadows." Ethan remained silent. Chloe swallowed hard before continuing. "And the bags should not be separated by color." Vanessa crossed her arms. "Why not?" Chloe hesitated briefly. "Because wealthy customers already expect organization. Disorder feels more personal." The room went completely still. Ethan watched her carefully while she adjusted one handbag lower beside a darker leather piece. Then she tilted one spotlight slightly downward. Instantly, the entire display softened. Warmer, richer, more intimate somehow. Even Vanessa noticed it. Nobody spoke for several long seconds. Finally, Ethan said quietly, "Continue." Chloe blinked in surprise. "What?" "Finish the display." Chloe looked around the room uncertainly. Every stylist stared at her now. Vanessa looked horrified. "Ethan, she is maintenance staff." Ethan finally turned toward the influencer. "And yet somehow she understands luxury presentation better than half this floor." Vanessa's face flushed instantly. The stylists quickly looked away. Chloe stood frozen beside the display wall, unable to breathe properly. Ethan glanced back toward her. You have 30 minutes. Then he walked toward the hallway again like he had not just detonated the entire social hierarchy of the room. Vanessa stared after him in disbelief before turning sharply toward Chloe the second he disappeared. Do not get comfortable, she snapped quietly. Men like Ethan get bored eventually. Chloe lowered her eyes immediately. I am not trying to. Good, Vanessa interrupted coldly. Because girls like you always confuse attention with importance. Then she grabbed her purse and stormed out with the stylist following awkwardly behind her. The second they left, silence rushed back into the studio. Chloe stood alone beside the glowing display wall while her pulse thundered painfully in her ears. 30 minutes later, Ethan returned quietly. The moment he stepped into Studio B, he stopped walking. The room looked transformed. Chloe had rearranged the entire accessories presentation while he was gone. Not dramatically, intelligently. The handbags now felt aspirational instead of intimidating, sophisticated instead of sterile. Warm pools of golden light reflected softly across textured leather, while scattered photography pieces created the feeling of a private Paris apartment instead of a corporate showroom. It looked expensive, but more importantly, it looked alive. Ethan slowly looked toward Chloe, standing near the ladder, adjusting one final spotlight. You finished. Chloe climbed carefully down from the ladder. Sorry if I changed too much. Ethan stared around the room silently for several seconds longer, then finally looked at her. You changed exactly enough. Something inside Chloe's chest tightened unexpectedly hearing that, because nobody had looked at her work with genuine respect before. Not since her father died. Ethan stepped closer toward the display wall, studying the details carefully. You understand emotional presentation instinctively, he said quietly. Chloe looked down awkwardly. I just noticed things. Ethan's eyes lingered on her face. That is not a small thing. The air shifted again between them. Softer now. More dangerous than before. Chloe quickly reached for her cleaning supplies. I should probably finish the east hallway before shift change. Ethan nodded slowly, but his attention never fully left her. As Chloe pushed her cart toward the exit, she could feel his gaze following her again through the silent studio. And for the first time since this strange connection began, Chloe realized something that frightened her far more than gossip or attention ever could. Ethan Calloway was not looking at her like a passing distraction anymore. He was starting to look at her like he had discovered something valuable. For the first time in years, Ethan Calloway canceled a board dinner because he could not stop thinking about a girl in bleach-stained sneakers. The realization irritated him immediately. He sat alone inside the back seat of his town car while Manhattan lights blurred across rain-covered windows. But instead of reviewing financial projections on the tablet in his lap, he kept replaying Chloe's voice from Studio B. Luxury customers do not buy bags first. They buy identity. Simple sentence. Quiet sentence. Yet somehow more insightful than half the presentations his executive team delivered all month. Ethan rubbed one hand slowly across his jaw before shutting the tablet completely. Dangerous. That was the word echoing in his mind lately whenever Chloe Bennett appeared. Dangerous because she did not want anything from him. Everyone wanted something from Ethan Calloway. Investors wanted confidence. Influencers wanted visibility. Designers wanted approval. Women wanted access to the life attached to his name. But Chloe looked at him carefully, cautiously, like she was waiting for the moment he proved himself disappointing. And somehow that affected him more than admiration ever could. Back in Queens, Chloe sat cross-legged on her apartment floor beside the couch, while sketch papers covered nearly every inch of the coffee table. Her mother slept quietly nearby beneath a knitted blanket, television flickering softly across the dim apartment. It was almost 3 in the morning, but Chloe could not sleep. Not after tonight. Her pencil moved quickly across paper while she sketched variations of runway silhouettes from memory. Structured shoulders, soft draping, elegant movement beneath warm lighting. Fashion had always lived inside her whether she allowed herself to admit it or not. She stopped suddenly when Ethan's voice drifted back into her head again. You changed exactly enough. Chloe closed her eyes tightly for 1 second. No, absolutely not. She refused to become one of those girls who built fantasies around rich men saying nice things. Ethan was her employer. Technically not even that. He owned the company paying the maintenance contractor paying her. There were galaxies between their lives. Yet somehow every conversation with him left her chest feeling unsteady afterward. like she had stepped too close to something powerful and dangerous without realizing it. Her mother stirred softly on the couch. "You are sketching again," she murmured sleepily. Chloe quickly closed the notebook halfway. Could not sleep. Her mother smiled faintly without opening her eyes. "You only draw like that when something matters to you." Chloe looked away immediately. "It does not matter." But even she did not sound convinced. The next evening, Chloe arrived at work expecting more whispers, more staring, more tension curling through the building whenever Ethan appeared nearby. Instead, something stranger happened. People started listening to her. Around midnight, one junior stylist nervously approached while Chloe cleaned mirrors beside the runway stage. Sorry," the girl said awkwardly. "Can I ask you something?" Chloe blinked. "Me?" The stylist held up two fabric swatches uncertainly. "Which lighting works better for dark silver silk?" Chloe stared at her in complete confusion. "Why are you asking me?" The stylist looked embarrassed. "Because Ethan approved your accessory display over the creative team version." Chloe's stomach dropped instantly. "Wait. He what?" "He ordered your layout sent to Milan this morning." Chloe nearly stopped breathing. The stylist mistook her silence for reluctance. "Sorry. Forget it." "No." Chloe swallowed hard before forcing herself to focus on the fabric swatches. "The warmer lighting. Silver looks richer against amber tones." The stylist's eyes widened slightly. "That is what I thought too." Then she hurried away before Chloe could respond again. Chloe stood frozen beside the mirrored wall long after the conversation ended. Ethan used her display, not just complimented it, approved it, sent it internationally. Her pulse refused to calm down afterward. Around 1:15 in the morning, Chloe pushed her cleaning cart into the executive fitting suite on the top floor. The room was empty except for soft piano music drifting from hidden speakers and garment racks lined with unfinished couture pieces. Giant floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Manhattan, glowing beneath midnight rain. Chloe quietly started folding discarded fabric covers while trying not to think about Ethan again, which failed immediately the second she noticed his jacket draped over one of the chairs nearby. Dark charcoal wool. Expensive. Familiar. Her heartbeat stumbled before she even heard his voice behind her. "You are here late." Chloe turned too quickly and nearly dropped the folded fabric in her hands. Ethan stood near the doorway holding two coffee cups. No tie tonight. Sleeves rolled slightly back again. Tired shadows beneath his eyes like maybe he had not slept much lately either. "I work nights," she answered softly. Ethan glanced toward the garment racks. "Most people already left." Chloe nodded carefully. "Fashion Week panic ended early, I guess." A faint smile almost touched his mouth. Almost. He walked further into the room before holding one coffee cup toward her. "You look exhausted." Chloe stared at the coffee suspiciously for 1 second before slowly taking it. Warm caramel latte. Exactly what she bought for herself whenever she could afford it. "How did you know what I drink?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. Ethan paused very slightly. "You buy the same thing downstairs every shift." Chloe blinked at him. He noticed that? Ethan immediately looked away first, almost annoyed with himself for answering honestly. "You should sit down before you fall over." Chloe hesitated before lowering herself carefully onto the fitting platform beside the garment racks. Ethan remained standing nearby, one hand resting loosely in his pocket while rain streaked softly across the windows behind him. Silence settled between them. Not awkward exactly, just dangerous in a quieter way now. Chloe wrapped both hands around the warm coffee cup. "Thank you," she said softly after a moment. Ethan nodded once. "The Milan buyers loved your display." Chloe looked up instantly. "My display?" "The accessory presentation." He studied her carefully. "You should probably get used to receiving credit for your work." Chloe gave a quiet, nervous laugh. "That sounds unlikely." "Why?" Chloe stared down into the coffee cup again. "Because people like me do not end up in rooms like this." Ethan's jaw tightened slightly hearing that. "People like you?" Chloe shrugged softly. "Temporary staff. Queen's apartment. Discount shoes." Ethan looked at her for a long second, then quietly asked, "Do you know what I see when I look at you?" Chloe's breath caught unexpectedly. "Dangerous. So dangerous." She forced herself not to answer. Ethan stepped closer toward the fitting platform slowly. "I see someone who notices beauty instinctively," he said calmly. "Someone who understands emotional presentation better than executives making six-figure salaries." Chloe looked away quickly before he could see how much those words affected her. You barely know me. I know enough, Ethan repeated softly. Silence stretched again between them while rain whispered against the windows. Chloe could feel his attention resting on her now the same way she felt heat standing too close to a fire. Not aggressive. Worse. Intentional. Then Ethan noticed the edge of a sketchbook partially visible inside her oversized tote bag beside the chair. Worn black cover. Frayed corners from years of use. His eyes narrowed slightly. What is that? Chloe instantly grabbed the bag and pulled it closer against her side. Too fast. Ethan noticed immediately. Nothing. Chloe. Her stomach tightened painfully hearing her name in his voice like that. Gentle. Curious. Careful. She shook her head quickly. It is embarrassing. Ethan stepped even closer now. Show me. Chloe looked trapped suddenly. Not physically. Emotionally. Because nobody had seen those sketches in years. Nobody except her mother. Her father's death had buried that part of her life permanently. Or at least she thought it had. Please, Ethan said quietly this time. The word stunned her more than the command ever could have. Billionaire CEOs did not say please to cleaning girls. Slowly, reluctantly, Chloe opened the sketchbook halfway. Ethan took it carefully from her hands. Then silence completely swallowed the room. Page after page filled with breathtaking designs. Elegant structure work. Emotional silhouettes. Sophisticated runway concepts sketched in careful pencil lines worn soft from time. Ethan stared at them without speaking while something unfamiliar twisted sharply inside his chest. Because suddenly he understood the truth. Chloe Bennett was never supposed to be cleaning floors inside his company. She was supposed to be creating the things everyone else chased. Ethan did not speak for a very long time. The sketchbook rested open in his hands beneath the soft fitting room lights, while rain continued sliding down the giant windows overlooking Manhattan. Chloe sat frozen beside him on the platform bench, every muscle in her body tight with regret. She should never have shown him the sketches. Never. Those pages belonged to the version of herself she buried years ago alongside her father's career and every impossible dream connected to fashion. But Ethan kept turning the pages slowly, carefully, like he understood they mattered. That somehow made it worse. These are original concepts, he said finally, his voice quieter now. Chloe stared down at her hands. They are nothing. Ethan looked up immediately. Do not do that. She blinked. Do what? Pretend your talent is small because life convinced you to hide it. The words landed directly in her chest. Chloe looked away toward the rain outside before he could see how much they affected her. You do not understand. Ethan closed the sketchbook carefully. Then explain it to me. Chloe let out a soft, humorless laugh. You really want the depressing version? I want the honest version. Silence stretched between them again. Ethan waited patiently. Not pushing. Not interrupting. Just waiting. Somehow that made honesty harder instead of easier. Chloe swallowed slowly before speaking. My father loved fashion more than anything, she said quietly. Not money. Not status. Actual fashion. Construction. Movement. Storytelling. Ethan listened without looking away from her. When I was little, he used to let me sit beside him while he worked. He taught me how fabric changes under different lighting, how silhouettes affect emotion, how elegance should feel effortless. A small sad smile touched her mouth briefly. He used to say beautiful clothing should make women feel seen instead of judged. Ethan's chest tightened unexpectedly hearing that. Because every sentence sounded exactly like the missing soul modern luxury fashion forgot years ago. Chloe looked down at the sketchbook in his hands. Then he trusted the wrong people. Her voice softened further. Investors. Executives. Rich people who loved his talent as long as it made them money. Ethan stayed silent. Chloe wrapped her arms loosely around herself. When the company failed, everyone blamed him. Nobody blamed the people who used him first. The room felt very still suddenly. After that, she stopped for a second before continuing carefully. Fashion stopped feeling beautiful to me. Ethan studied her face quietly. There it was. The real reason she hid. Not insecurity. Grief. So you became invisible instead, he said softly. Chloe gave a faint shrug. Invisible people survive longer. Ethan looked at her for one dangerous second too long. You were never meant to disappear. Chloe's breath caught slightly. The way he said things unsettled her. Calm. Certain. Like he saw parts of her she spent years trying to bury. She stood up quickly before the feeling could settle deeper. I should finish working. Ethan rose slowly too. still holding the sketchbook. I want you to meet with my creative directors. Chloe froze instantly. Absolutely not. Ethan blinked once. Probably not used to people rejecting him that quickly. Why? Chloe stared at him like the answer should have been obvious. Because I clean floors, Ethan. His name slipped out naturally this time. Dangerous mistake. Ethan noticed immediately. And your directors would laugh me out of the room. Ethan's expression hardened slightly at that. No one in this building laughs at you again. The certainty in his voice sent warmth and fear colliding through her chest at the same time. Chloe shook her head quickly. You cannot promise that. Ethan stepped closer. Watch me. Silence fell hard between them. Chloe could feel her heartbeat climbing again. Too close. He was standing too close now. Not physically inappropriate. Just emotionally overwhelming in ways she did not know how to defend against. Ethan lowered his voice slightly. You belong in this industry, Chloe. She looked up at him finally. My father belonged in this industry too. That sentence stopped everything. Ethan saw the fear behind her eyes immediately. Not fear of failure. Fear of becoming emotionally destroyed by the same world that destroyed her father. For the first time since meeting her, Ethan understood something uncomfortable about himself. He wanted to protect her from that world, which made absolutely no sense considering he practically owned part of it. Before either of them could speak again, Ethan's phone buzzed sharply in his pocket. His jaw tightened the second he saw the caller ID. Board chairman. Again. He silenced it immediately. Chloe noticed. You should answer that. Ethan ignored the phone completely. Tomorrow night, he said instead. Come upstairs after your shift starts. Chloe frowned slightly. Why? I want to show you something. Ethan, tomorrow. His tone softened slightly. Please. There it was again. That impossible word coming from a man like him. Please. Chloe stared at him uncertainly before finally nodding once despite every instinct warning her not to. Ethan's expression eased almost imperceptibly. Then he handed the sketchbook back carefully like it contained something fragile. Do not hide these anymore, he said quietly. Chloe took the sketchbook against her chest protectively. Good night, Ethan. He watched her walk toward the fitting room doors beneath the soft golden lights. Oversized maintenance uniform hanging loosely around a girl who should have been designing couture collections instead of cleaning around them. Something deep inside him tightened painfully watching her leave. Because the more Ethan learned about Chloe Bennett, the more impossible it became to see anyone else. The next evening, chaos swallowed Callaway Atelier before sunset. Fashion Week was only 6 days away now, and tension spread through every floor of the building. Assistants rushed between meetings carrying garment bags and tablets. Models practiced runway walks under harsh white lights while photographers screamed over music blasting through the main showroom. Somewhere on the executive floor, 2 senior designers argued loudly enough for half the building to hear. Chloe arrived for her shift carrying the same worn tote bag and discount coffee. But tonight the atmosphere felt sharper somehow. Electric. The second she entered the maintenance locker room, another cleaner looked toward her nervously. You know people are talking about you upstairs, right? Chloe nearly stopped walking. What? Creative directors. Stylists. Everybody. The woman lowered her voice. They think Ethan is obsessed with you. Chloe's stomach dropped instantly. That is ridiculous. But even she did not sound convincing. 30 minutes later, while wiping mirrors near the west runway stage, Chloe noticed 2 junior assistants whispering nearby while glancing repeatedly in her direction. One of them quickly looked away when their eyes met. Great. Exactly what she feared. Attention. Attention always came with consequences in places like this. Around midnight, Ethan appeared exactly where he said he would. He stood near the private elevator wearing a black suit without a tie, one hand in his pocket while executives hurried nervously around him carrying last-minute production schedules. The second his eyes found Chloe across the showroom floor, everything else around him seemed to disappear. Chloe felt it instantly. That dangerous, focused attention settling directly on her again. Ethan crossed the marble floor toward her calmly, while conversations nearby lowered almost immediately. Employees watched openly now. Come with me, he said quietly. Chloe glanced nervously around the room. Everyone is staring. Ethan barely looked at anyone else. Let them. Her pulse stumbled. God, he made everything worse without even trying. Ethan noticed the uncertainty on her face and lowered his voice further. Trust me. Chloe should have said no. Absolutely should have. But instead she followed him toward the private elevator while dozens of confused employees watched the billionaire CEO walk beside a cleaning girl like she mattered. The elevator ride to the executive floor felt longer than it actually was. Chloe stood stiffly beside Ethan while soft instrumental music played overhead and Manhattan lights reflected across mirrored walls around them. She kept her eyes fixed firmly on the glowing floor numbers instead of the man standing only 2 feet away from her. Because every time she looked at Ethan lately, something dangerous happened inside her chest. "You look nervous," he said quietly. Chloe let out a soft breath. "That is because I am standing in a private elevator with a billionaire while wearing cleaning gloves." Ethan glanced toward the blue rubber gloves still tucked awkwardly into the pocket of her oversized maintenance shirt. To his own surprise, the sight almost made him smile again. "You could stop reminding people you clean floors." Chloe finally looked up at him. "I clean floors, Ethan. You do more than that." The certainty in his voice unsettled her immediately. Before she could answer, the elevator doors opened silently onto the executive design level. Chloe stepped out slowly and froze. The entire floor looked nothing like the chaotic showroom downstairs. Everything here felt quieter, richer. Massive white walls displayed framed couture sketches beneath warm recessed lighting, while glass offices overlooked a private runway studio stretching across nearly half the floor. Elegant gowns stood on dress forms beneath protective covers like artwork inside a museum. Chloe stared silently around the room. "This is where your collections are created?" Ethan watched her reaction carefully instead of answering immediately. "Usually." Chloe walked slowly forward, almost afraid to touch anything. "It smells different up here." Ethan raised an eyebrow slightly. "Different? Fabric," she murmured softly. "Real silk. Leather oils. Steam pressing." She looked around the studio again with something dangerously close to wonder in her eyes. "My father's workshop used to smell like this." Ethan's chest tightened unexpectedly hearing that. He should not have cared this much already. Yet somehow every glimpse of the real Chloe Bennett affected him deeper than it should have. "Come here," he said quietly. Chloe followed him toward the center runway platform, where dozens of unfinished gowns waited beneath soft lighting. One dress form stood alone near the back wall covered entirely by black fabric. Ethan stopped beside it. "I need your opinion." Chloe blinked in surprise. "My opinion?" "Yes." He reached forward and slowly removed the black cover. Chloe stopped breathing. The gown underneath was breathtaking. Structured silver silk cascading into layers of midnight blue chiffon with delicate crystal detailing along the neckline. Elegant, dramatic, expensive beyond imagination. But the second shock faded from her face. Ethan noticed something else replace it. Hesitation. "You do not like it," he observed calmly. Chloe looked horrified immediately. "No. I mean yes. It is beautiful." Ethan folded his arms lightly. "But..." Chloe looked around nervously, like maybe cameras were hidden nearby waiting for her to embarrass herself. "You are asking for honesty?" "Always." She swallowed slowly before stepping closer toward the gown. "The structure is incredible," she admitted softly while studying the silhouette. "But it feels cold." Ethan watched her carefully. "Cold?" Chloe nodded faintly. "It looks impressive, but not emotional." She touched the edge of the chiffon carefully with her fingertips. "Women will admire this dress." Then she looked up at him. "But they will not remember themselves in it." Silence settled heavily across the studio. Ethan stared at her without speaking. Because somehow, once again, she had identified the exact thing missing from the collection that his own creative directors failed to articulate for months. Chloe stepped backward immediately. "Sorry. You said honesty." Ethan looked toward the gown again slowly. "No," he murmured. "You are right." Chloe blinked. "I am." Ethan gave a faint, humorless laugh. "That is becoming a pattern." Before she could answer, voices suddenly echoed from the hallway outside the studio. A group of executives entered carrying tablets and garment samples before immediately stopping short at the sight of Chloe, standing beside Ethan near the runway platform. The entire atmosphere shifted instantly. Curious eyes, confused expressions, silent judgment. Chloe felt it immediately. One older executive frowned openly at her maintenance uniform. Another exchanged a quick glance with his assistant. Ethan noticed every single reaction. His expression cooled instantly. "Meeting moved downstairs," he said calmly before anyone could speak. One executive hesitated. "But the Milan presentation, downstairs, Ethan repeated evenly. Nobody argued after that. The group quickly disappeared again, though Chloe still caught one woman whispering softly before the doors closed. Heat crawled painfully up Chloe's neck. I should go, she muttered immediately while stepping away from the gown. Ethan turned toward her sharply. No, everyone already thinks this is weird. Let them think. Chloe stared at him in disbelief. That is easy for you to say. Ethan stepped closer slowly. Why? Chloe let out a quiet laugh, filled with frustration. Because nobody destroys powerful men with rumors, Ethan. That sentence hit harder than she realized. Ethan looked at her carefully for several long seconds before answering quietly. Who taught you to expect cruelty before kindness? Chloe looked away immediately. Life. Silence stretched again between them, while distant thunder rolled softly beyond the windows outside. Ethan glanced toward the silver gown beside them, then back at Chloe. Fix it. She frowned slightly. What? The dress, he said calmly. Fix what feels cold. Chloe stared at him like he had completely lost his mind. You cannot be serious. Ethan walked toward a nearby design table before placing scissors, pins, and fabric markers beside the gown. I have never been more serious. Chloe's pulse spiked instantly. Ethan, that dress probably costs more than my apartment building. And right now it still does not work. He looked directly at her. Fix it. Chloe stared at the gown again, then at the tools waiting beside it. Every instinct inside her screamed not to touch something this expensive, this important. But another part of her, the buried part that still loved design despite everything, ached to step closer. Ethan watched the war happening behind her eyes silently. Finally, Chloe whispered, If I ruin it, you will not. The certainty in his voice wrapped around her nerves in the most dangerous way possible. Slowly, carefully, Chloe stepped toward the gown again. Her fingers hovered near the neckline for one uncertain second before instinct took over. She adjusted the draping slightly, removed 2 crystal strands, softened the waist structure with 1 fold of silk. Ethan watched in complete silence while something almost frightening unfolded in front of him. Chloe transformed under design lighting. Her exhaustion disappeared. Her nervousness faded. Every movement became confident, intentional, beautiful. She moved around the dress form like music instead of fear controlled her body now. 15 minutes later, she stepped back quietly. Done. Ethan looked toward the gown and forgot how to breathe for a second. The dress had changed completely. Same materials, same structure. Yet now it felt alive somehow. Softer, emotional, unforgettable. Ethan slowly looked toward Chloe, standing beneath the warm studio lights, blonde hair slipping loose around her face, while nervous uncertainty returned the second she finished creating. What? She asked softly after several seconds of silence. Ethan stared at her carefully, then finally answered with complete honesty. I think you just saved my entire collection. Chloe spent the entire subway ride home staring at her reflection in the dark train window, like maybe she would recognize the girl Ethan Calloway saw when he looked at her. Because she definitely did not. Manhattan lights flashed across the glass while exhausted commuters leaned silently against metal poles around her, but Chloe barely noticed any of it. Her mind kept replaying the moment Ethan looked at the redesigned gown. The silence afterward. The expression in his eyes. Not polite approval. Not amusement. Respect. Genuine respect. That terrified her more than humiliation ever had. By the time she unlocked the apartment door in Queens, it was almost 4 in the morning. Her mother stirred softly from the couch, where she had fallen asleep beneath the knitted blanket again. You are home late, she murmured sleepily. Chloe set her bag down carefully beside the tiny kitchen counter. Fashion emergency. Her mother smiled faintly without opening her eyes fully. Good emergency or bad emergency? Chloe hesitated. I honestly do not know yet. She moved quietly through the apartment while reheating leftover soup in the microwave. But even simple movements felt strange tonight. Unsteady somehow. Because for the first time in years, someone looked at her talent like it deserved space in the world again. And worse than that, she wanted to believe him. The next morning, Ethan Calloway walked into the executive conference room, carrying the redesigned gown photographs beneath one arm, while 12 board members waited around a polished black table overlooking Midtown Manhattan. Financial reports glowed across giant digital screens, while assistants poured espresso beside untouched breakfast trays. Usually Ethan entered these meetings perfectly controlled, focused, untouchable. Today he looked distracted, which meant dangerous things for everyone else in the room. Milan approved the updated silhouette immediately. One executive announced while adjusting his glasses nervously. European buyers called it the strongest couture piece in the collection. Ethan remained standing near the window instead of sitting, because now it has emotional structure. Several executives exchanged confused glances. The previous version tested well too. Another board member argued carefully. Ethan finally looked toward the presentation screen, displaying side-by-side photographs of both gowns. The previous version looked expensive, he corrected calmly. This version feels unforgettable. Silence followed. Nobody challenged him after that. Ethan tossed the printed photographs onto the table. Use the redesign moving forward. One board member frowned slightly while flipping through the images. Which senior designer handled the adjustment? Ethan paused for half a second. Chloe's face flashed through his mind instantly beneath soft runway lighting. Blonde hair falling loose while her fingers transformed silk into something alive. Someone overlooked, he answered simply. Across town, Chloe's shift started badly and only got worse. The second she stepped onto the showroom floor that night, she knew rumors had spread further. Conversations lowered when she walked by. Stylists stared openly now. Two assistants stopped whispering the second she entered the elevator. Invisible was officially gone. Around 11:30, Chloe pushed her cleaning cart into the backstage fitting corridor where garment racks lined both walls beneath fluorescent lights. She tried focusing on work while ignoring the tension around her. But halfway through wiping mirrors, she heard heels approaching sharply behind her. Vanessa Marlowe. Of course. You are really committed to this little fantasy, huh? The influencer asked coolly while stopping beside the makeup station mirror. Chloe kept wiping the glass without looking up. I do not know what you mean. Vanessa laughed softly. Please. Everybody knows Ethan suddenly turned your little Cinderella story into his newest hobby. Chloe's chest tightened instantly. Nothing is happening. Right. Vanessa leaned against the counter while crossing perfectly manicured arms. Men like Ethan do not notice women like you unless they are entertaining themselves. The words landed exactly where Vanessa intended them to. Chloe stayed silent. Vanessa studied her face carefully. Oh my God, she said slowly. You actually believe he respects you. Chloe finally looked up. You do not know him. Vanessa smiled without warmth. I know rich men. Before Chloe could answer, another voice cut sharply through the corridor. Then maybe you should stop embarrassing yourself around them. Both women turned instantly. Ethan stood near the backstage entrance wearing a dark navy suit, expression calm, but eyes cold enough to silence the entire hallway immediately. Vanessa straightened awkwardly. Ethan, I was just talking. I heard. His gaze shifted briefly toward Chloe. 1 second only, but she felt the concern hidden beneath it immediately. Vanessa forced a small laugh. Everybody is already gossiping anyway. Ethan stepped closer slowly. Then maybe everybody should find more productive things to do. The corridor went completely silent. Several assistants nearby suddenly became deeply interested in garment racks instead of eye contact. Vanessa's smile faded completely now. You are defending her? Ethan looked directly at the influencer. I am correcting disrespect. Chloe's pulse started racing again. Dangerous. Every time he defended her publicly, the building noticed more. Vanessa noticed it too. Her eyes narrowed slightly while studying Ethan's face. Then suddenly something understanding flickered behind her expression. Oh, she said softly. This is real. Ethan's jaw tightened immediately. Vanessa laughed once under her breath before grabbing her purse from the makeup counter. That is going to end badly. Then she walked away down the corridor, heels clicking sharply against polished concrete until silence returned again. Ethan exhaled slowly before turning toward Chloe. Are you okay? Chloe stared at him in disbelief. You really need to stop doing that. He frowned slightly. Doing what? Looking at me like I matter in front of everyone. The honesty slipped out before she could stop it. Ethan's expression shifted instantly. Softer now. More dangerous. You do matter. Chloe looked away quickly. Not in your world. Ethan stepped closer while lowering his voice. You still think this is about pity? Chloe let out a small, frustrated laugh. Is it not? No, the answer came too fast. Too honest. Silence wrapped tightly around them again, while backstage lights hummed softly overhead. Ethan studied her face carefully. Do you know what I see when I walk through this building lately? Chloe shook her head slightly. People pretending. His eyes never left hers. Then I see you. Her breath caught. God. He had to stop saying things like that. Ethan noticed the panic flickering behind her eyes now. Not rejection. Fear. Fear of trusting him. Fear of believing she deserved this attention. Fear of becoming vulnerable inside a world that already taught her vulnerability gets punished. Come with me tonight, he said quietly. Chloe blinked. Where? Dinner. Her eyes widened immediately. Absolutely not. Ethan almost smiled at how fast she answered. Why? Chloe stared at him like he had lost his mind. Because people already think something is happening. Something is happening. The sentence landed between them heavily. Chloe stopped breathing for one dangerous second. Ethan realized too late, he said the quiet part out loud. But instead of taking it back, he stepped even closer. I have not stopped thinking about you in days. Chloe's heart slammed painfully against her ribs. Ethan, I try, he admitted quietly. It is not working. The vulnerability in his voice stunned her more than the words themselves. Billionaire CEOs were not supposed to sound affected. Yet standing here beneath harsh backstage lights, Ethan looked at her like she was the only thing in the building making sense anymore. Chloe stepped backward instinctively. You barely know me. Ethan's gaze softened slightly. Then let me. Silence stretched between them, while distant music drifted faintly from the runway rehearsal upstairs. Chloe wanted to say no. Needed to say no. But every time Ethan looked at her with that impossible honesty, the walls she spent years building around herself started cracking in places she could not control anymore. Finally, she whispered softly, one dinner. Ethan's expression changed instantly. Not smug. Not victorious. Relieved. Like she had just given him something he genuinely wanted instead of something he expected to receive. And somehow, that frightened Chloe Bennett more than anything else yet.